Okay, this is Big Boss at Foxhound Woods Bowl, coming to you from Fort Lauderdale and from my blog page over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. I'm also repping the guys over at Acid Tactical, so you could check them out at acidtactical.com. Anyway, paintball has considerably evolved over the decades, from rock and cocks to gravity feed, from tubes becoming hoppers to magazines, and magazine fed getting box mags to lay down the hate. With that being said, the certain positions within a organized team structure have been very ambiguous, if not completely androgynous, between your snipers, your marksmen, your support gunners, and your riflemen. For this particular video, we're going to be discussing the riflemen as far as the tactical paintball group and its evolution, you might say. I'm going to be diving into a little bit of the history on the rifleman concept from both a military history and a paintball perspective, as well as running through some of the gear configurations. But first, a word from our friends and sponsors over at acidtactical.com. You can check them out there. And remember, when the shit hits the fan and you've got to trust your gear with your life, ask yourself this one question: can your gear survive the acid test? We'll be back right after this. With the advent of firearms, the spear was supplanted rather quickly in the grand scheme of things. For paintball, it was no different. From the days of cock and rock paintball markers came hopper feds, and now we're in the era of the magazine-fed paintball gun. In a history of armies marching in rigid formations lay down volley shots, that too has evolved into small unit tactics where an individual rifleman can also evolve into various things. That means laying down suppression fire as an automatic rifleman,
taking the precision shot as a designated marksman, nailing indirect targets indirectly with the grenade launcher, or leading the charge as a team leader. The Rifleman has its own evolutionary history. In this video, we're going to be discussing a little bit of each one of those facets that are part of the Rifleman's evolutionary family tree. And with that being said, grab your popcorn. This may get a little drawn out.
Okay. Hope that little history lesson wasn't a bore for you guys. But okay. As you can see, kitted up, and what I'm wearing is going to be your basic Rifleman setup for both the military and paintball players. This is going to be your circa 90s, 2000 style, early GWAT stuff. But let's start off with the marker I'm running for this one. We're going to be talking hopper feds as the kickoff for this, because hopper feds are going to be what most players today are going to be more familiar with when they get into paintball. What I'm using is a Tippmann 98 custom derivative, the U.S. Army Alpha Black. This is when the U.S. Army were looking to recruit. They looked into the paintball world and they decided to license their brand onto a family of paintball guns built around the 98 custom family. As you can see, this looks like an M4 carbine or Car 15 style, which at that time was supplanting both the M16A2 and A4 service rifles within the U.S. Army as a whole. A lot of the Marines were still using the M16 at the time, but I digress. This is a bare basic, semi-auto only hopper fed, though you can modify this with a electronic trigger and a cyclone feed system. Later models will have a response trigger, so take that what you may. This is still a very robust and solid marker. Retractable stock, 4-position, like the actual AR carbine it was modeled after. Nice foregrip modeled after the M4 carbine. Definitely something that is still a sight to see on many fields, and for a bare basic gun, very flexible enough to be a good rifle. Now, moving on to my gear load, I'm running your basic Alice rig. This is web gear that's been around since 1972 when the U.S. military first adopted it as a replacement to both the M1956 and M1967 gear setups that were around since Vietnam. Now, this is a bare basic setup. You got 4 magazine pouches, 2 on each side, which was fairly common. Some guys carry 2 or 3. Others would carry 4, depending upon their unit, their mission profiles, their unit SOPs, stuff like that. Since we're doing 90s and 2000s, I'm still running 1-quart canteens. I would have been doing this at the time too when I first got into paintball. So there is that. I'm running a pistol because I'm doing this as a team leader style, meaning that I've got a backup for my primary, because this would be considered a light gear kit with 400 rounds on the belt, 200 on the gun itself, for a load of 600. Now, the magazine pouches I'm running are Alice pouches, designed to hold 330 round Stanag mags for your AR platforms, your Tavors, and other NATO standard rifles in a 5.56. Now, slice the mag dividers out. You can carry a 75 100 round pod in here, which is fairly much a standard thing. I did this when I first got into paintball, and these pouches are easily affordable. You can find them anywhere for a very good price, sometimes as cheap as $5 if you know where to look. You got reproduction models and various camo patterns, but military standard would be olive drab, US stenciled on it. If you're wanting to make sure of that, go for it. Other than that, running a camelback carrier on here. This for paintball players getting out into the 90s, 2000s. This would have been an option. This one in particular was a field mod job done by a soldier. Took the black camelback carrier and just put a cover on it made out of a piece of BDU jacket. I could run this as a little assault pack, or I could run this as my camelback carrier, or even for an air tank if I wanted to go more minimalistic. But basic rifle setup, everything you see here is what you get. Got a butt pack on here which I would run an airline and an air tank through if I didn't replace the canteen with the air tank. With that being said, paintball players from the 80s up into the early 2000s would be running web gear or some type of battle vest. Military surplus is often your cheapest bet, so be that as it may. Let's see what other havoc I can cause. Alright. Cool setup. Time. Now, back when Special Ops Paintball was beginning to forge itself in the early 2000s, they had a campaign called the Woods Ball Revolution. And with that, they were establishing different positions for your typical tactical paintball team back when markers like the 98, the A5 were becoming a big splash in the woods ball scene. And this is within 18 months before the Tippmann X7 really came to market. But I digress. Now, with the Special Ops Paintball Woods Ball Revolution deal, other team positions were named for weaponry used during the medieval time, and it was based on different escalations of firepower in a way. Your light rifleman was the dagger, your medium rifleman was a saber, your heavy rifleman was a broadsword, your heavy firepower was called the hammer. They had two Tippmanns or two paintball guns mounted on what was called a double trouble. That was a hand crank motherfucker. God only knows what sicko cooked that shit up. Other than that, team leader's team leader, sniper's a sniper. You guys get the idea. Now, this look that I've got here is inspired more on that saber and broadsword side. As far as heavy firepower goes, we're using a Army Alpha Black again. This time, this one is my brother's personal marker. As you can see, outfitted with Project Salvo front end because of the quad rail on here. We put on a nice vertical foregrip. That also has a bipod on it, grip pod. You just set this thing out to something nice. You could pretty much dig in and lay down that sweet firepower all day long. Better feeding is provided by the Cyclone feed system, and an electronic trigger in here, especially to lay down that kind of hate that can only be understood when it's coming out of the barrel at 20 shots a second. Now, that being said, hooked up to a remote line. This time, as far as my gear is concerned, I decided to upscale. Instead of using 4 100 round pods, I've upped it to 6 140 round pods. This kind of setup would be a escalation on the Rifleman as we get into more of the 2006 to 2010 time frame. This would be your saber, your broadsword stuff if we're doing Special Ops Paintball naming conventions, but for the more modern Milsim style, this would be on par with a heavy rifleman light machine gun load. And using the Interceptor body armor here for a little added panache. This is a military issued FLC, or Fighting Load Carrier. This came out with Land Warrior, and these two were designed to be worn hand in hand, or have the vest, have everything on here, worn onto the Molly vest here, which would be on the Interceptor. However, most guys didn't do that going into Iraq because they're using the LBV 88s, or they're using deuce gear like this. Now going around, as you can see, I got my pods hooked up here. I could have access to all 6 of them in a firefight if I need to, and can easily access some of them on my opposite side, but more often than not, I'm using this side to get to my paint. If I had an assistant gunner with me, they'd be taking the pods out of here, or I'd have to switch over to a different hand. As you can see, this is set up like an infantry set. You've got the air tank here in the back, set up the way I'd have a butt pack if I was running it with actual Molly surplus kit. But all this kit you see on here, from the radio pouch, the pod pouches, the air tank, as well as my little GP admin pouch here on the flick, are all from Modern Combat Sports, which was Rapid 4 at the time. Now, with that being said, I'm wearing the Interceptor vest. Because I'm running a pistol here, I could easily just drop all this kit here, and I could just run it with just my Interceptor, my admin pouch here, which carries my second pistol mag for the pistol. That way I could just jump right into a pistol primary if I wanted to do a mag fed only deal, if I'm running as the light machine gun / automatic rifle in this case. Other than that, this is pretty much what American troops were wearing at the onset of Iraqi freedom, as well as a little beyond in 04, 05 with Gothic Serpent, Vigilant Resolve, if you understand those missions. Other than that, it's pretty much it for the hopper-fed side of paintball for a rifleman position. Now, let's move on to what some of you guys really want to see, mag feds. Okay. Last run. Alright. Now we're going into more modern mag-fed paintball. I know I'm not running a plate carrier, but this is mainly for demonstrational purposes. I'm still doing a rifleman / team lead loadout, but with the advent of magazine-fed paintball, things got more interesting, as you can say. Team positions were becoming more solidified between what was considered a rifleman, what was considered a automatic rifleman, a light machine gun, and it was even further solidified, or the waters were made a little murky on that aspect, with the advent of the first strike round from Tiberius Arms, now called by its flagship product, First Strike. Now, that being said, this particular kit setup is pure rifleman. I'm running the Molly Medic 2 combat vest, and yes, I'm still rocking 3-color desert fatigues that's completely sterile, though I still run my unit identifiers and my patches on the gear pouch here, and anywhere else I got Velcro that makes sense, but still. As far as a rifleman setup goes, my mag pouches here are going to be the best ones to roll with. These ones were Molly versions of pouches that were originally seen on something like the Black Hawk DOAV vest, which would be Delta Force Operator Assault Vest, where you could hold 3 AR mags that are 30 rounders for your AR-15s, your Tavors, your pretty much your Stanag mags, or 2 Kalashnikov pattern magazines in each pouch. As you can see, this time, a little feel modification of the paracord and the duct tape to give myself the mag poles on here to make it a little easier to get them out. But since magazines are going to be a big time investment, I'm always going to be rocking a dump pouch on here, so that way when I'm in the field I can easily pull this thing out and I could dump my dead or partially full mags in here. While I reload, I could use this pouch for sensitive site exploitation and scenario games, but generally speaking, it's to hold magazines. So, need to change the magazine, drop this into the dump bag, pull this, grab by the mag pole, yank it, get it in the gun, and I'm back into the fight. However, the Rifleman setup here has also evolved too. I'm doing 2 additional roles aside from a rifle: a team lead or the Grenadier as well. Now, when we're talking the Grenadier or the guy with the grenade launcher, this thing was to hit dead space. This is to have an extended range for fragmentation or high explosive, anything that was beyond the range of somebody being able to throw it. Therefore, the grenade launcher, for paintball applications, having a grenade launcher would be tantamount to doing anti-tank stuff if you shoot the vehicle with a foam projectile in game. However, for a close quarters combat situation, this thing is going to be used in an anti-personnel capacity, i.e., it's going to be used like a 12 gauge shotgun. Pop this thing open, whoop, get a grenade shell out, pop this thing in, close the breech, you're good to go. That sound is enough to scare the ever-living crap out of the new guys or guys that know what's coming at them. Fire, says you can send a spread of 3 or 4 .68 caliber paintballs, about 650 caliber, or a whole bunch of 43 caliber paintballs at a target, and gives that nice spread, and that pop sound of the grenade going off is enough to freak people out, i.e., that's the reason why this thing has serious psychological advantages for the player using it. However, as far as a basic rifle setup goes, the 203 was developed during Vietnam as a way to give the individual riflemen more firepower instead of having them carry another weapon like a CAR-15 to go with an M79, or just have a pistol if they're engaging other targets. That way it's more, that's a rifleman that could put down indirect fire on an individual level. For paintball, it's a similar thing as a shotgun. However, there is a debate on whether or not a Grenadier should be its own role or something that a team leader should do in the military unit or a paintball team even. But these things are seen as impractical, but if you know what you're doing, you can do some real fucking damage. Other than that, sky's the limit for these particular items.
Okay, finishing this off is going to be the designated marksman. Now, unlike the sniper, the designated marksman is a rifleman that is using a more precise optic for longer range engagements. They are organic to any combat unit on as far as infantry and the like, but for paintball you've got 2 different options for your designated marksman. you can use either the standard round ball or shaped projectiles for your designated marksman role. Keep in mind, the designated marksman will look for targets of opportunity, such as enemy team leaders, comms guys, equipment operators, or specialists. Other than that, a designated marksman is just like any other rifleman, with the added exception that they are the ones that do more surgical shooting and can suppress the enemy through precision fire rather than volume by fire.
Alright, that completes our video about the role of the rifleman in paintball. If you guys like what you're seeing, don't forget to read the written version of it over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. Also, you could follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram. Don't forget to check out the Outer Heaven Paintball Facebook page. And if you guys need any cool tactical shit, check out my friends over at Acid Tactical. Check them out at acidtactical.com. Also, they've got Instagram, they've got YouTube, they've got Amazon, eBay, Etsy pages. Links will be provided in the description to this video. And both Acid Tactical and Outer Heaven Paintball have a Teespring shop, so check them out as well. Anyway, this is Big Boss, and I'm out of here.